Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you all, and great to be here at Silverstone. Nowhere better, in fact, to mark the fact that our economy has truly turned a corner. Now, we're a month away from the Grand Prix here, and we can be confident about even more British success. 7 of the world's 10 leading Formula One teams are all based here. More Grand Prix cars are made in this country than anywhere else, and the UK has won more titles than any other nation. So Formula One is a great example of all our strengths coming together, our technological know-how, our innovative advanced manufacturing capability, and the skill of our workforce. 25,000 engineers and apprentices are involved in this industry. And Formula One isn't the only thing they do here at Silverstone. As nice as it would be for Brad Pitt to turn up at our manifesto launch, he's currently filming just outside with a brilliant British crew, one of the many UK-based productions taking place thanks to our support and tax cuts for the creative sector. So from the Northern Studios in Hartlepool to Pinewood to the coming Crown Studios in Sunderland, Britain is truly now the creative capital of Europe. So just thinking about that, the fact that we can lead the world in such competitive fields should make us all enormously proud of our country, but crucially optimistic about our future, because we Brits can outcompete the best in the world. And what we Conservatives want is more British success stories, and that's what our manifesto will deliver. Now, the last few years have been some of the toughest our country has faced in decades. We were hit by COVID and then the spike in energy prices following Putin's invasion of Ukraine. But economic stability is now returning. Inflation back to normal. Real wages been rising for almost a year now, and the economy growing healthily again. So the question now is, who is best to turn that foundation into a secure future for you, your family, and our country? Now, this manifesto is our clear plan for the United Kingdom. It's about the bold actions that we will take to deliver that secure future. And we Conservatives know that security is essential for success. And that's why we're raising defence investment to 2.5% of GDP by 2030 to deal with the increasingly uncertain world that we live in. This is the biggest sustained increase in the defence budget since the end of the Cold War, and one that Keir Starmer will not match. Labour would rather keep the civil service at its bloated, pandemic level rather than give our armed forces the equipment they need. And when there is a war in Europe, turmoil in the Middle East, China flexing its muscles in the South China Sea, we are in a world of increasing threats, and we must show our enemies that this country, with our allies, will stand strong. Now, this axis of authoritarian states, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, must know that their attempts to destabilize our world will simply not succeed. Now is the time for bold action, not an uncertain Keir Starmer as our Prime Minister. Now, our increase in defence investment will not only fire up our defence industrial base, creating good jobs here at home from Barrow to Lossiemouth, but allow us to stand up for our interests, deter our enemies, and defend our values. It's only we Conservatives, with our iron resolve, who can be trusted to keep Britain safe. Now, we need border security too. The confidence that it is your government that decides who comes to our country and not criminal gangs. And that is why if you vote Conservative on July the 4th, the flights removing illegal migrants will depart in July, establishing the deterrent that will stop the boats. Because when people know that if they try to come here illegally, they won't get to stay, then they will stop coming. And if we are forced to choose between our security and the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, we will always choose our nation's security. But Labour have no answer to this question. As you saw the other week, Keir Starmer simply can't tell you what he would do with people who come here illegally because he doesn't believe it's a problem. Now, with Brexit, we took control of our borders, but migration has been too high in recent years, and we have a clear plan to reduce it. Last year, we announced changes which mean 300,000 people who were previously eligible to come here now can't. And we will introduce a migration cap that means Parliament, your elected representatives, will vote on how many people should be able to come here every year. Our plan is clear. We will halve migration as we have halved inflation and then reduce it every single year. Now, we don't just need military and border security. As Putin's invasion of Ukraine has shown, we need energy security too. It is only by having reliable, homegrown sources of energy that we can deny dictators the ability to send our bills soaring. So in our approach to energy policy, we will put security and your family finances ahead of unaffordable eco-zealotry. Unlike Labour, we don't believe that we will achieve energy security via a state-controlled energy company that doesn't in fact produce any energy. That will only increase costs. And as Penny put it well on Friday, there's only one thing that the GB in Starmer and Miliband's GB Energy stands for, and that's giant bills. Now, our clear plan is to achieve energy security through new gas-powered stations, trebling our offshore wind capacity, and by having new fleets of small modular reactors. These will make the UK a net exporter of electricity, giving us greater energy independence and security from the aggressive actions of dictators. And let me just reiterate that. With our plan, we will produce enough electricity to both meet our domestic needs and export to our neighbours. Look at that, a clear, conservative plan, not only generating security, but also prosperity for our country. And we Conservatives also have a plan to give you financial security. We will enable working people to keep more of the money that you earn, because you have earned it and have the right to choose what you spend it on. Now, Keir Starmer takes a very different view. He says he's a socialist. And we all know what socialists do, don't we? They take more of your money because they think it belongs to them. Now, I know Labour have been taking inspiration from one of Brad Pitt's most famous films. The first rule of Labour tax rises is that you don't talk about tax rises. But we know that the policies Labour have already announced will require them to increase taxes on working households by £2,094. My friends, families cannot afford that, and it is our job to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now, I had to take difficult decisions because of COVID, but now we are cutting taxes for workers, for parents and pensioners. And we are the party of Margaret Thatcher and Nigel Lawson, a party, unlike Labour, that believes in sound money. So today's plans, and you would expect nothing less from Jeremy and me, are fully funded. We will pay for permanent reductions in taxation by controlling the unsustainable rise in working-age welfare that has taken off since the pandemic. In this party, we believe that it is morally right that those who can work do work, and that hard work is rewarded with people being able to keep more of their own money. So we will ensure that we have lower welfare so that we can deliver lower taxes. And as Conservatives, we believe that hard work shouldn't be taxed twice. That's unfair. That's why Jeremy has been cutting national insurance contributions that only workers are forced to pay. Our national insurance tax cuts are already worth £900 to the average worker. And we will keep cutting taxes in the coming years, meaning that by 2027, we will have halved national insurance to 6%. That is a tax cut, my friends, worth £1,300 to the average worker. Making more progress towards our long-term ambition to abolish the double taxation on work when it is economically responsible to do so. Now, I also want to say something about the self-employed, because they're the risk takers, the people who graft hard to make a living, who get our economy growing. They embody the most conservative of values, the desire to build something, to create wealth and opportunity. But setting up on your own means you don't have the same security that those on payroll do. So it must be worth taking that risk. We need to make it worth taking that risk. And that means that their taxes must be cut. So, in the next Parliament, we will scrap entirely the main rate of self-employed national insurance. A tax abolished and enterprise encouraged. We want to encourage more people to become entrepreneurs, to set up their own businesses, to try and make something of it. So we will abolish that tax for millions of our hardest workers and create a new culture of enterprise in our country. We Conservatives want a Britain where setting up a business is as natural as taking a job. So we will do more for the self-employed so that they can do more for Britain. Now, security also means a security of knowing that you will have dignity in retirement. So we will also cut tax for pensioners with the new Triple Lock Plus, ensuring that the state pension is never dragged into income tax. Labour, by contrast, would introduce a retirement tax, meaning that for those who rely entirely on the new state pension, they would be caught by income tax for the first time in our country's history. And we know Labour's record, from the 75p state pension increase to Gordon Brown's £118 billion tax raid on private pensions. It is clear your pension simply isn't safe with the Labour Party. And we Conservatives want to spread opportunity across the whole of our United Kingdom. We don't want you to leave the place that you call home to succeed. And ultimately, that is a test of levelling up. So we will give our young people the skills and opportunities they need to succeed in today's world. We won't cling to outdated ideas, such as the belief that the only route to success is through university. So we will curb funding to rip off degrees and use it to fund 100,000 new high-quality apprenticeships. We will build on the success of our education reforms by introducing the Advanced British Standard, which will enable our young people to receive a broader education and break down the split between technical and academic education that has so held our country back. We'll invest in a new form of national service to give our young people the chance to enjoy new experiences, learn new skills, and feel a sense of community, belonging, and national purpose. National service will help us build a more unified, more cohesive society so that we can be secure in the knowledge that we are all on the same side. And we Conservatives also want to create a society in which everyone has a chance to own. In the last 5 years, we've delivered 1 million new homes. In the next Parliament, we will go even further, delivering 1.6 million new homes by speeding up planning on brownfield land in our inner cities and by scrapping defective EU laws. And we will go further, because we Conservatives believe in tax cuts. So, for young families, for the first-time buyers purchasing a home up to £425,000, we will abolish stamp duty entirely. And that's not all we'll do. We'll also introduce a new form of Help to Buy, a new Help to Buy scheme to get a new generation onto the property ladder, all part of our plan to build an ownership society where more and more people have the security and pride that comes from owning your own home. From Macmillan to Thatcher to today, it is we Conservatives who are the party of the property-owning democracy in this country. In fact, we want to make life easier for people at every stage of their lives. So we'll also give working parents 30 hours of free childcare a week from when their child is 9 months to when they start school. We'll make child benefit fairer and simpler by moving to a household system that no longer penalises single-earner households and ensuring that any family that earns less than £120,000 a year will receive it. That tax cut is worth, on average, £1,500 to 700,000 families, showing, once again, it is we Conservatives that are the party of the family, and we will always champion them. And we want all families to have the peace of mind of knowing that the NHS will be there for you if you fall sick. So we will increase NHS funding in real terms every year and train and recruit more doctors and nurses every year. We will make the NHS work better through investing in new technology and reforming how it works. You should know that if your kids have an earache or a sore throat or a chest infection, you can get quick and rapid treatment without having to take time off work, and so we will expand our fantastic Pharmacy First programme. But parents should also feel that it's safe for their children to walk home at night. So we will recruit 8,000 new police officers, one for every neighbourhood, and cut antisocial behaviour through intensive hotspot policing. And we will protect women and girls by guaranteeing single-sex spaces through an amendment to the Equality Act to make it clear that sex means biological sex. Now, Labour like to talk the country down. They want to pretend that everything would be great if they had never left office and pretend that somehow we have not achieved anything. But that's just simply not right. Remember the note that said there's no money left? When Labour left office in 2010, unemployment was higher than when they came into government. Public and private debt was accumulating, the banking system was broken, the deficit was ballooning, and even Labour accepted that after years of spending, significant cuts in public expenditure were required. They went into the 2010 election admitting they would have to make cuts. Labour left Britain on the brink of bankruptcy. And worse, The money that Labour had put into public service had not been accompanied by sufficient reform. Labour's welfare system was more about disguising how many people were out of work than actually getting people back into employment. And for all the money that Labour had put into education, our schools were falling down international league tables. And almost half of Labour's increase in the NHS budget had been swallowed up by higher pay and more bureaucracy. And despite that awful inheritance, we've delivered the third highest rate of economic growth in the G7, created 4 million jobs, 800 a day. With Kemi using our Brexit freedoms to open up new markets, we have now overtaken France, the Netherlands and Japan to become the 4th biggest exporter in the world. And we Conservatives under David took the difficult decisions to repair the public finances and control the national debt. And that meant that when COVID hit, we could support people and businesses with furlough, deliver the fastest vaccine rollout in the world, and provide record funding to the NHS. We reformed welfare by capping benefits and introducing universal credit. Ian's reforms mean that now work always pays. We've reduced absolute poverty. We've reduced child poverty. We've reduced pensioner poverty. We've cut carbon emissions by a third, maintained our position as NATO's 2nd biggest defence power, and Boris and Ben and Grant put the country at the forefront of defending Ukraine against Russian aggression because Britain will always stand up to tyrants. We've halved violent and neighbourhood crime, thanks to the work of Home Secretaries from Theresa to Priti to James, and improved standards in our schools. Thanks to Michael's reforms and a generation of inspiring teachers, English school children are not just the best readers in the United Kingdom, they're the best in the Western world. We strengthened our United Kingdom with the forces of separatism in retreat. We legislated for equal marriage, and now it is not even surprising for so many people from diverse backgrounds to sit around our cabinet table. I know you'll agree with me. We may not have got everything perfectly right, but that is a record I am mighty proud of. Now, this country has a proud past and a bright future, and I believe in that innate confidence in ourselves that has always run through our island story. And just as we're proud of all that we created, invented and discovered in our past, so we can be confident and optimistic about what we will achieve in our future. But I'm not blind to the fact that people are frustrated with our party and frustrated with me. Things have not always been easy, and we have not got everything right. But we are the only party in this election with the big ideas to make our country a better place to live. Labour offer no solutions to our problems. They would only make them worse. And all a vote for reform or the Liberal Democrats does is allow Labour to do whatever they want to our country. Do not forget that Keir Starmer is asking you to hand him a blank cheque when he hasn't said what he'll buy with it or how much it's going to cost you. Just think about what Labour would mean. Higher taxes for every working household. Can you afford £2,000 more in taxes? French-style labour laws that will lead to higher unemployment and more strikes, a ballooning welfare bill, higher immigration, and more net zero costs. Their policies will mean, as they let slip this weekend, bigger class sizes because of their desire to slap VAT on school fees. Labour would cave into the demands of the public sector unions putting up your taxes to meet the union's extortionate demands. And Keir Starmer will also use that blank cheque to change the rules of the game to his benefit, giving 16-year-olds the vote, not because he believes they are adults. He doesn't want them to serve on a jury or do any of the other things that adults do, but because he thinks they'll vote for him and that will make it harder to remove him from power. If Labour win this time, they'll change the rules so that they are in power for a very long time. So if you don't know what Labour will do, don't vote for it. If you're concerned about what Starmer isn't telling you, don't vote for him. And if you're worried about what Labour's £2,094 of tax rises would mean for your family's financial security, don't vote for them. In conclusion, let me say this. We Conservatives will always stand for our values, for aspiration, for freedom, for opportunity, for security. Your Conservative MP will deliver lower taxes, lower immigration, protected pensions, and a sensible approach to net zero. Now, our country wants a clear plan and bold action. Our country needs a secure future, and it is this Conservative manifesto that will deliver it. Thank you. Thank you. Right, we've got lots of questions from the media to come, so the fun hasn't stopped. Here we go. Let's start with GB News.
Prime Minister Christopher Hope from GB News. You stand in front of a slogan saying clear pan, bold action, secure future. Well, why not be bold and commit to pulling out of the ECHR if it keeps stopping the small boats?
Thanks, Chris. I've been clear throughout that I believe that our plan is compliant with all our international obligations. But I've also been clear, and the manifesto is crystal clear, that if we are forced to choose between the jurisdiction of a foreign court, including the ECHR, and our country's national security, then I'm going to choose our country's national security every single time. Next, we go to the FT.
Prime Minister, George Parker from the Financial Times. You represent a northern seat, Richmond. You've seen the opinion polls. You've seen Keir Starmer campaigning in the north of England. Do you reflect on the last 5 years and consider you may have let down the areas you promised to level up, and whether indeed there's a reckoning coming?
George, I don't know if you were here before, but I don't know if you heard the speech from the Conservative Mayor of Teesside, who is right here. And I'll take a second to pay tribute to Ben and all our fantastic MPs in the Tees Valley for what they've delivered for the region. I mean, Ben gave you a flavour of it before, because we've been working together since I became an MP. You talk about the north. Teesside was an area that Labour neglected for decades, took it completely for granted. And it was Ben and our MPs and councillors that transformed the region. And I was fortunate to be able to work with them to help do that. But if you go around Teesside now, every high street and town centre, Eaglescliffe, Yarm, Stockton, Darlington, Hartlepool, is getting investment from our various levelling up funds. The new Brexit-enabled Freeport is creating unbelievable high-quality jobs in the industries of the future. The Treasury campus is in Darlington, and as Ben said, it's one thing for Treasury Campus to be in the north, but it's not in Newcastle, it's not in Manchester, it's not in Leeds, it's in Darlington, because towns matter, which is why we're also backing 130 towns across the country, including in the north, with £20 million each, so local people can invest in their priorities. But more than any of that, what Ben and the team have done, what the Conservatives have done, is give everyone in Teesside a sense of confidence and optimism about their futures. Next, we go to the BBC.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. For much of the last 18 months, you've tried everything to try and revive Conservative fortunes, and not much appears to have worked. Could we rename this document today your Last Chance Saloon? What do you think is in this that can shift things that perhaps haven't shifted up until now? Thank you.
Well, Chris, I've been very clear when I got this job. We'd been through a very difficult time as a country. But thanks to the hard work and resilience of the British people and the actions of the government, we have truly turned a corner. Inflation back to normal, the economy growing, wages rising, energy bills falling. And that's why this election is right to talk about the future. The future that we want to deliver for our country is one where, above all, families will have financial security because their taxes are being cut. Look at what this manifesto contains. A tax cut for everyone in work as we halve the rate of national insurance. A tax cut for the self-employed, abolishing the rate of self-employed national insurance in the next Parliament. A tax cut for pensioners, protecting the state pension from paying Labour's retirement tax in the next Parliament, because we believe in a country where you have dignity in retirement. A tax cut for parents, because we want to support working families, making sure that they get support with their children's costs, and a tax cut for all young aspiring homeowners as we abolish first-time buyer stamp duty up to £425,000. That is bold action from this Conservative government, this Conservative party, to deliver a more secure future. But it doesn't just stop with our tax-cutting agenda. We're spreading opportunity through 100,000 new apprenticeships in a modern form of national service. We're ensuring our border security with a new legal migration cap in Parliament and a plan to get the flights off to Rwanda, and we're ensuring our country's energy security, but also doing it in a proportionate way that lowers people's bills, does not saddle them with extra costs in an ideological pursuit towards net zero. That is the offer in this manifesto, and there is a clear choice at this election. We are the only party putting bold action on the table to transform our country. Labour have nothing to say about the problems our country faces and how best to address them. Nothing. Keir Starmer is asking for a blank cheque, and he will not tell people which taxes he is going to put up that are ultimately going to cost them £2,000. So if you want a secure future, if you want lower taxes, if you want your pensions protected, if you want a more sensible approach to net zero, and you want your border secure, vote Conservative at this election. Next, Times Radio.
Kate McCann, Times Radio. Prime Minister, Times Radio listeners often tell us that they're fed up that nothing works. They care a lot about the services they use every day. But there is nothing in this manifesto about the billions of pounds of cuts to local councils, to justice, to prisons that are coming down the track in the years ahead. What is your plan to prevent those billions of pounds of cuts? Thank you.
Well, under our plans, Kate, investment in day-to-day public services will continue to rise in the new Parliament. It will continue to rise ahead of inflation. But I also think it is reasonable to look for efficiencies in the public sector. And what we've seen is that public sector productivity since the pandemic has declined. It's declined quite significantly. Now, as the Chancellor set out a little while ago, if we just recover those levels of efficiency that we had a few years ago, so nothing heroic, nothing that we haven't done before, that will free up £20 billion. Right? £20 billion that could be reinvested in public services on everyone's behalf without raising a penny of their taxes. So I think that's the right priority. Right? Recover where we used to be before the pandemic, focus on efficiency and productivity, and you can see that in the NHS productivity plan that we have fully funded. And if we do that, that unlocks billions of pounds that we can reinvest back into the front line to deliver better high-quality services for people. Because, of course, I want to see high-quality services, but as a Conservative, I also don't want people's taxes to have to go up when we can get efficiencies to fund them. ITV.
Prime Minister, Tories in government since 2010 have been pushing up the tax burden, the share of national income taken by tax to levels we haven't seen since the late 1940s. Why should anyone believe you when you say you're going to cut tax?
Well, simply, Robert, because we already have. Look, but I'm upfront with people. I did have to take difficult decisions after COVID. That was the right thing to do. Because when I was Chancellor, I thought the right thing to do was to support our country through COVID. Whether it was supporting the NHS, whether it was a furlough scheme. And when the energy crisis in Europe hit, the right thing to do was to help everyone with their energy bills. Those things don't come for free, and I think everyone watching knows that those things don't come for free. And you don't build our country's long-term financial security by shying away from difficult decisions like that. That's not the type of leader I am. So I did make those difficult decisions. But now that our plan has worked, inflation is down, wages are rising, the economy's growing, we have started cutting people's taxes. This year, everyone in work is getting a £900 tax cut on average, thanks to what Jeremy has done. And we're cutting taxes for businesses, making this the most attractive country in the world for businesses to invest. Something that hundreds of our leading businesses describe as the single most transformational thing that we could do for growth and productivity in our country. Delivered it. So yes, people can trust me when I say we're going to keep cutting their taxes. One, because we've set out a very clear plan to pay for it, because I think the welfare bill is growing at an unsustainable rate, and there is an opportunity, again, just to reverse some of the damage that COVID has done to free up an enormous amount of savings that we can reinvest in tax cuts, but also because that's the type of country I believe in. And that's why people can trust me. I believe in a country where hard work is rewarded. That's why I want to cut people's tax when they're working hard. I believe in a country that encourages entrepreneurship and risk-taking and small businesses, which is why I want to cut taxes for the self-employed. I believe everyone should have the ability to own their own home. So I want to cut taxes on stamp duty. I believe if you worked hard all your life, you should have dignity and security in retirement, which is why we want to cut taxes for pensioners. And there is nothing more precious in life than my family. And I'm sure that's the same for everyone in this room, which is why we want to support families and we want to cut tax for them too. That's why you can trust me. Can I go to the Daily Mail?
Thanks, PM. Jason Gross from the Daily Mail. You're targeting the self-employed here. Do you think White Van Man can swing this election for you? And on the wider picture, there's a lot to say in here about tax, but unless I've missed it, nothing about the overall burden. Can you today guarantee us that if you get in, overall taxes will be lower by the time you've finished?
Yeah. Jason, because of the measures that are announced in the manifesto, and you can see the document afterwards, the tax burden will be about 1 percentage point lower in every single year compared to the forecast that you saw at the spring budget a couple of months ago that Jeremy outlined. And you talked about a particular group. I do think there is something that is special about those who are self-employed. Now, I come from a small business family myself, but those people who are setting out on their own, taking that risk, do something that's incredibly brave, right? And our economy is built on people like that. They don't have the security of knowing that the paycheck's coming at the end of every month. They're out there working incredibly hard to provide a better life for them and their families, hoping that they can start like that and grow something bigger. And I think that is enormously brave. And they deserve all our admiration, but they also deserve our support. And that's why we want to take the bold action to abolish the main rate of self-employment national insurance in the next Parliament, demonstrating not just that we want people to have financial security, but demonstrating our values and the type of economy and society that we want to build. Telegraph.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Ben Riley-Smith from The Telegraph. Manifestos are about policies. They're also about politics. There's 4 weeks to go. You're 20 points behind in the polls. What do you say to those who say the manifesto isn't ambitious enough and that this won't be a game changer?
Well, Ben, just to repeat what I said before, right, the tax cuts that I went through, tax cut for everyone in work that will be worth £1,300 in the next Parliament as we halve national insurance. Tax cut for the self-employed, where we abolish the rate of self-employment. A tax cut for everyone who's wanting to start buying their own home as we abolish the stamp duty for first-time buyers up to 425k. A tax cut for families to support them as they bear their young children, and a tax cut for the millions of pensioners in our society. So yes, I do believe that is bold, and that comes on top of the action we've taken to secure our borders, to get flights off to Rwanda, a new migration cap, and a more proportionate approach to net zero. But the choice at this election is clear, because all elections are ultimately a choice. Either Keir Starmer or I are going to be Prime Minister on July the 5th. If I'm Prime Minister, you will have this bold action. All you've got from the Labour Party is a blank sheet of paper. Not a single big idea that has been put on the table in this election campaign so far. Right, when the first announcement we made, a new form of national service, which has completely energized conversations everywhere across the country. And yes, not everyone will necessarily agree with it, but no one can deny that it is not bold action that can transform our country, and I think transform our country for the better. Nothing comparable to that from the Labour Party. So as people think about the choice, yes, of course, there are challenges we face as a country, but they should ask themselves, who has the solutions to those? Who is going to do things that are going to actually deliver the change that you want to see? The only thing that is certain about Keir Starmer and the Labour Party is that they're going to put up everyone's taxes, and they're going to put them up by £2,000, and I'm going to fight very hard till the last day of this election campaign so that that doesn't happen. Okay, Sky News.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Central sell to voters from you is, I will cut your taxes. But a recent poll shows that only 1 in 6 voters believe you won't raise their taxes or raise major taxes, compared with 1 in 4 for Labour. Labour's more trusted on tax than you at the moment. That's your record as Chancellor and now Prime Minister. I'm sure it's a disappointment to you. Haven't you blown it now, whatever you say? Thank you.
Well, Beth, I'm actually very proud of my record as Chancellor. Because when I'd had that job 3-4 weeks and a pandemic struck this country, I saw that it was right to do something radical, to do something bold, because that was what was required to help get the country through it, and we delivered on that. Those are my values, those are the values of our party, and we will always be there to protect this country through difficult times. But we're also a responsible party. We're also a party that's not afraid to take decisions that are in the country's long-term interests, even if they're difficult. You saw that with me when I said, yep, we did all these things, but we do need to also pay these things back and secure our children's financial futures. And you saw that with me a couple of summers ago, where I made the same argument again, that it wasn't right then to start cutting taxes until we had tamed inflation, and now that we have, I've delivered on that. So I'm not afraid to do things that are difficult. The only poll that matters is the poll on July 4th, and I'm very confident as we approach that date, the choice will become increasingly clear for people. There is only one party that will continue to cut your taxes after July 4th, and it's the Conservative Party, and there's one party that's going to put them up, and it's the Labour Party, and that choice will be crystal clear. The Sun.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Harry Cole from The Sun. Your manifesto here says that you'll process tens of thousands of outstanding asylum claims within 6 months. But all the Home Office statistics show that speeding up the processing of asylum claims leads to higher levels of approval. When Labour suggested this exact policy, your own ministers called it an amnesty. So is this what your policy accounts to? An amnesty for asylum seekers? And if I may, on Chris's point, you're hemorrhaging support to Nigel Farage. Why on earth not go harder on the ECHR? Why fudge it? Thank you.
So, Harry, that's just simply not right. Last year, thanks to the improvements we've made, we processed more claims than at any point in the last 2 decades, right? And that has actually helped us release over 100, maybe 150 hotels now back to local communities for normal use. And actually the grant rate, you talk about the grant rate was down last year. It was down. So because we changed how we evaluate the claims, we refused far more than we had in the past. But the choice on migration is quite simple at this election. You know, I believe you need a deterrent. Right? We've done lots of things that have helped us get the numbers down by a third last year, and those are all good and sensible. But in order to fully solve this problem, it just needs to be clear that if someone comes to our country illegally, they can't stay. And that means you need a safe place to send them. That's what the flights to Rwanda will do, establish that deterrent. And I've said what I've said about the ECHR, but I'll also say our Act specifically gives ministers the power to make the decisions on Rule 39 things that are handed down by Strasbourg. I would not have put that power in the bill if I was not prepared to use it, right? And also change the civil service guidance to make it clear that they need to follow the ministerial decisions. But I'd also point out that, as we've seen in the last month or so, multiple other European countries all agree that having a deterrent like that, safe third countries to return people, is a crucial part of solving this problem. So when I made my speech just after becoming Prime Minister, I said on this issue, where we lead, others will follow. That is now happening. The only person who has not got that memo, normally he's very in favour of EU alignment, is Keir Starmer. Right. Could go to the Express.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Steph Spiro from the Daily Express. The manifesto promises a regular rhythm of flights to Rwanda every month as part of a relentless process to remove illegal migrants. Can you put a figure on the number of flights you expect to take off every month, or a number of people, please?
No, Steph, we've deliberately not, because we don't want to compromise operational security, but I've been very clear that it's not just about one flight. You do need a regular rhythm of flights because you need to build that deterrent. And what I can tell you is that the airfield is on standby. Illegal migrants have already been detained. Escorts have been trained. The flights have been booked. The caseworkers are already working through it. So all the plans are in place so that if I'm re-elected as Prime Minister, if we are in government, those flights will go to Rwanda and we can build that deterrent. And that's a choice for everyone at this election. If you want the boat stopped, there is no way to do that without having a deterrent. Ours is the only plan on the table. And as I asked Keir Starmer repeatedly the other night, what would you do with the migrants that come here illegally? There simply wasn't an answer. Right? Just saying smash the gangs is not a plan. A slogan is not a plan. Right? You need to have something to do with illegal migrants. We've got a plan, he doesn't, and that means the situation will just get worse. Right. And I think lastly we have, is it a local democracy reporter?
Hi, sorry,
Nadia?
I think I've sat on the wrong side.
Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Nadia Lincoln. I'm the local democracy reporter for Northamptonshire. In the county, we've had a massive problem with SEND children, not getting enough provision and not getting the proper education, which has also been reflected nationally. In the most recent report, it found that there were systemic and widespread problems. Why have these families been let down for so long, and what would a Conservative government do to help them?
Yeah. Thanks, Nadia. And we want to make sure that children everywhere, and regardless of their backgrounds, get all the support and the opportunities they need to live fulfilling and thriving lives. When it comes to SEND in particular, we've raised the funding by about 60% overall over this Parliament. I don't have the figures off the top of my head for Northamptonshire, but what we're talked about in the manifesto is to open many more SEND-free schools, which is in the manifesto and funded, because we know that provision needs to increase, and the manifesto makes specific provision for that, because as I said, this is about making sure children, no matter where they grow up in our society, have all the opportunities to be supported and to thrive, and that will always happen under a Conservative government. Good, thank you very, very much.